It's 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Sarah sits at her desk, fingers flying across her keyboard, lost in the rhythm of digital productivity. Then it happens. The sharp, piercing ring of her phone shatters the silence. Her heart rate spikes from 72 to 110 beats per minute in seconds. Her palms begin to sweat. Her throat constricts. The device vibrates angrily on her desk, demanding attention, demanding a response. But Sarah can't move. She stares at the unknown number flashing on the screen as if it were a venomous snake coiled and ready to strike. The ringing stops. Silence returns. Sarah exhales, a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Another call avoided, another battle won. Or was it? Sarah isn't alone. She's one of millions trapped in the invisible prison of telephobia, the fear and avoidance of phone conversations. In a 2019 survey of UK office workers, a staggering 76% of millennials admitted experiencing anxious thoughts when their phone rings. But here's the twist that makes this phenomenon truly fascinating. We live in the age of smartphones, where these powerful devices are constantly in our hands, yet we're terrified to use them for their original purpose, talking. The psychology behind this paradox runs deeper than simple shyness. When you pick up a phone call, your brain enters a uniquely vulnerable state. Unlike face-to-face conversations, where you can read body language, facial expressions, and environmental cues, phone calls strip away these safety mechanisms. You're left with nothing but your voice, your words, and the terrifying uncertainty of how they're being received on the other end. Dr. Emma Richardson, a clinical psychologist specializing in communication disorders, explains the neurological response. When someone with phone anxiety sees an incoming call, their amygdala, the brain's fear center, activates as if responding to genuine danger. The body releases cortisol and adrenaline, triggering the fight or flight response. Except in this case, most people choose flight. But why does this happen? The answer lies in a psychological concept called negative anticipation. Your mind becomes preoccupied with catastrophic possibilities. What if you say something stupid? What if there's an awkward pause? What if the person on the other end judges you? What if you can't answer their questions? The unknown nature of phone calls, you don't know who's calling, what they want, or how long it will take, creates a perfect storm of anxiety triggers. Consider Marcus, a 28-year-old software developer. In his world, he's confident, competent, and respected. He leads team meetings, presents code reviews, and mentors junior developers. But when his phone rings with an unknown number, that confidence evaporates. I once let a call from a potential employer go to voicemail 3 times before I could force myself to call back, he admits, embarrassment coloring his voice. By the time I finally answered, they'd already filled the position. My fear literally cost me a job opportunity. The symptoms of phone anxiety aren't merely emotional, they're visceral and physiological. Sufferers report increased heart rate, nausea, shortness of breath, dizziness, and muscular tension. Some describe it as feeling like they're about to give a public speech to thousands of people, except this speech is improvised, unscripted, and could go wrong in countless ways. What makes phone anxiety particularly insidious is its ability to create a vicious cycle. The more you avoid phone calls, the more anxiety builds around them. Each avoided call reinforces the belief that phone conversations are dangerous, making the next call even more terrifying. Psychologists call this avoidance conditioning. Your brain learns to avoid the stimulus, phone calls, reduces anxiety in the short term, so it becomes harder and harder to break the pattern. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. In a world increasingly dependent on digital communication, you might think phone anxiety would be recognized, addressed, and accommodated. Instead, it remains a largely invisible struggle. People who wouldn't hesitate to discuss their fear of flying or heights often hide their phone anxiety, fearing it will be dismissed as ridiculous or weak. After all, how do you explain to your boss or your family that a device designed to connect you to others has become an instrument of psychological torture? The truth is, phone anxiety isn't about weakness or irrationality. It's about vulnerability. Every phone call is a leap into the unknown, a moment where you must trust your ability to respond, adapt, and communicate without the safety net of preparation or the option to edit your words. For those whose brains are wired to perceive uncertainty as threat, that leap feels less like stepping off a curb and more like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. As we'll discover in the chapters ahead, this modern epidemic has roots that run deeper than technology, touching on fundamental aspects of human psychology, social evolution, and the changing nature of how we connect in an increasingly digital world.
Picture this. It's 1995. Emma, a 25-year-old graduate student, sits by her landline phone, a spiral cord stretching from the receiver to the base. She's nervous about calling her professor to discuss her thesis. She picks up the phone, dials, waits. No answer. She'll have to try again later. There's no text alternative, no email option, no DM to slide into. Phone calls were the primary lifeline, and everyone, anxious or not, had to adapt. Fast forward to 2026. Emma's daughter, also 25, faces a similar situation, but she has options. Infinite options. Email, text, Slack, WhatsApp, Instagram DM, LinkedIn message, even carrier pigeon feels more appealing than making a phone call. The difference? Her brain has been fundamentally rewired by technology, creating neural pathways that favor asynchronous, editable, and controllable communication. The emergence of phone anxiety isn't coincidental, it's evolutionary. Research published in Cyberpsychology and Behavior found that socially anxious individuals consistently rate texting as a superior medium for expressive and intimate contact compared to voice calls. Why? Because texting provides what psychologists call cognitive breathing room. When you text, you have the luxury of time. You can craft your message, delete it, rewrite it, check your grammar, add the perfect emoji, and then, only then, hit send. Your brain's prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and decision-making, gets to do its job without the pressure of real-time response. This creates a sense of control that phone calls simply cannot offer. Dr. Michael Chen, a neuroscientist studying digital communication patterns, explains the neurological shift. When we engage in asynchronous communication, like texting, different neural pathways are activated compared to synchronous communication, like phone calls. Texting engages the brain's reward system. Every message sent and received triggers a small dopamine release. Phone calls, however, activate areas associated with stress response and social evaluation. But here's where the story becomes truly fascinating. The technology that was supposed to connect us has actually created a generation that's more comfortable with screens than voices. A 2025 study found that Gen Z spends an average of 7 hours daily on their phones, yet less than 9 minutes of that time involves actual voice conversations. They've grown up in a world where communication is visual, editable, and optional. Consider the psychology of control. When you receive a text, you control when you read it, when you respond, and how much emotional energy you invest. There's no pressure to respond immediately, no awkward pauses to fill, no vocal tone to manage. You can be having the worst day of your life, but your text can still read, "I'm great, thanks for asking." This ability to curate your presentation creates a psychological safety that phone calls violently strip away. Research reveals another critical factor, the phenomenon of digital personas. Many people develop separate identities online, more confident, more articulate, more interesting versions of themselves. Texting allows them to maintain this carefully constructed persona. But phone calls? Phone calls demand authenticity in real time, and for many, that authenticity feels terrifyingly exposing. The absence of visual cues in phone conversations also creates what psychologists call negative interpretation bias. When you can't see someone's facial expressions, your anxious brain fills in the blanks, usually with worst-case scenarios. A slight pause becomes, "They think I'm boring." A change in vocal tone becomes, "They're annoyed with me." The ambiguity that makes phone calls efficient for some makes them psychological minefields for others. There's also the matter of social conditioning. Modern digital etiquette has established texting as the default, making phone calls feel intrusive and presumptuous. Think about it. When was the last time you called someone without texting first to ask, "Is now a good time to call?" The very act of calling has transformed from normal to exceptional, from expected to potentially rude. But perhaps the most profound shift is this: phone anxiety has become socially contagious. When 76% of millennials experience anxiety around phone calls, it normalizes avoidance behavior. Parents who text their children instead of calling model this behavior. Workplaces that rely primarily on email and Slack reinforce it. Even customer service has shifted toward chatbots and messaging platforms, further reducing the necessity and therefore the practice of phone conversations. The irony is heartbreaking. We carry devices capable of connecting us to any human voice on Earth, yet we've collectively decided that connection is too uncomfortable. We've optimized for convenience and control while sacrificing spontaneity and genuine vocal connection. Yet understanding this evolution isn't about judgment, it's about recognition. The brain adapts to its environment, and our environment has fundamentally changed. Phone anxiety isn't a character flaw, it's an adaptation to a world that has made phone calls optional, thereby making them feel exceptional and therefore threatening. The question isn't whether phone anxiety is valid, it clearly is. The question is, what do we do about it?
James stands in his apartment, phone in hand, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. He's rehearsed what he needs to say 15 times. He's written it down. He's even set a timer. He'll call at exactly 3 p.m., not a minute before, not a minute after. The clock shows 2:59. His heart pounds. His hands shake. 3 o'clock arrives. He dials. The phone rings once, twice, 3 times. Then, a voice. Hello? For a split second, James considers hanging up, but he doesn't. He speaks, and something remarkable happens. The world doesn't end. Breaking free from phone anxiety isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about understanding that your fear, while real, is lying to you. The psychological research is clear. The most effective treatment for phone anxiety combines cognitive restructuring with graduated exposure therapy. Translation: you need to challenge your fearful thoughts and then, slowly, methodically, face them. Dr. Sarah Williams, a cognitive behavioral therapist specializing in social anxiety, shares a powerful insight. Phone anxiety persists because of a phenomenon called safety behaviors. People avoid calls, over-prepare, or only call certain people. These behaviors provide temporary relief but strengthen the underlying fear. The brain never learns that phone calls are actually safe. The science of cognitive restructuring starts with interrogating your catastrophic thoughts. When you think, "I'll say something stupid and they'll judge me," you need to ask, what's the evidence for this belief? Has this actually happened before? Even if it did, what were the real consequences? This process, called Socratic questioning, helps your rational brain challenge your anxious brain's narrative. Here's a powerful reframe. Phone anxiety sufferers often believe they're uniquely terrible at phone conversations. The reality? Research shows that 61% of millennials actively avoid phone calls. This means the person on the other end is statistically likely to have similar anxieties. They're probably nervous too. They're probably hoping you'll carry the conversation. They're probably relieved when you suggest ending the call. But knowledge alone doesn't conquer fear. Action does. This is where exposure therapy becomes transformative. The principle is elegantly simple. Gradually expose yourself to the feared situation until your brain recalibrates its threat assessment. A typical exposure hierarchy for phone anxiety might look like this. Level 1. Call automated systems, checking bank balance, weather information. Practice talking with zero social pressure. Level 2. Call a family member you're comfortable with. Low stakes, high familiarity. Level 3. Call a business with a simple question. What time do you close? Brief, transactional, impersonal. Level 4. Call a friend you haven't spoken to in a while. Moderate emotional investment. Level 5. Make a call while someone else is in the room, adding social observation pressure. Level 6. Call someone about a complex issue requiring discussion and problem solving. The magic happens in the repetition. Each successful call rewires your neural pathways, teaching your amygdala that phone conversations don't actually threaten your survival. With each call, the anxiety diminishes, not dramatically, but incrementally. And incremental change over time becomes transformation. But let's be honest about something crucial. You don't need to make every interaction a phone call. The goal isn't to eliminate texting or email. Those communication methods have legitimate value. The goal is to remove the paralyzing fear that prevents you from calling when it genuinely would be beneficial. Research from the Journal of Anxiety Disorders found that participants who completed a 6-week exposure therapy program for phone anxiety reported a 73% reduction in avoidance behaviors and a 68% reduction in anxiety symptoms. More importantly, they reported improved professional opportunities, stronger personal relationships, and a greater sense of agency in their lives. There are also practical strategies that provide immediate relief. The smile technique. Research shows that smiling while speaking, even if the other person can't see you, actually changes your vocal tone and reduces stress hormones. Your brain receives positive feedback from the physical act of smiling. The script strategy. Write down key points, not a word-for-word script, so you have a roadmap without being rigid. The availability check. Start calls with, "Is this a good time?" This simple question reduces the fear of inconveniencing others. The post-call reward. After difficult calls, do something enjoyable. This creates positive associations in your brain. The perspective shift. Remember that most people are focused on their own concerns, not analyzing your every word. Perhaps most importantly, seek professional help if phone anxiety significantly impacts your life. Cognitive behavioral therapy has a strong evidence base for treating telephobia, and online therapy options exist for those uncomfortable with in-person sessions. The journey from phone anxiety to phone confidence isn't about perfection, it's about progress. It's about reclaiming a fundamental human ability, connecting through voice. Because at the end of the day, beneath the anxiety and avoidance, there's a simple truth. Your voice matters, your words have value, and the person on the other end probably wants to hear from you more than you realize. The ring of terror can become the ring of opportunity. All you have to do is answer.